Today we are going to demonstrate passive range of motion, which is also called PROM. PROM exercises must be verified by the resident's care plan and note any restrictions or precautions on specific joints. The joint exercises will be done in order from shoulder to toe. We are going to omit neck movements in a long-term care facility. Do not force the joint beyond its present range or beyond the point of pain. Move each joint slowly and watch the resident's face for any indication of pain. Move the joint 5 times for each exercise or as stated in the care plan, and always use good body mechanics. So first, you will gather your supplies, which is just a bath blanket. The resident does have to be covered with something. Knock on the door and ask if you may come in. And then close the door. Introduce yourself and explain that you are going to be doing joint exercises. As soon as the bath blanket is set down, we will sanitize. And then we will verify the resident's identity by looking at the ID bracelet if they have one. Ask visitors to leave if applicable. Pull the privacy curtain all the way around the bed. Raise the bed to a working height and lower the side rail. Then cover the resident with a bath blanket. The first joint is going to be the shoulder. Each joint has to be supported while you are doing these exercises. The first movement is flexion and extension. Flexion is raising the arm straight up, and extension is bringing it back down to the bed. We will do this 5 times. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. The next movement is abduction away from the midline of the body, and adduction, bringing the arm back to the body. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. The third movement for the shoulder is horizontal adduction, bringing the hand to the opposite shoulder and bringing it all the way back out. Horizontal adduction, abduction, horizontal adduction, abduction, horizontal adduction, abduction, and horizontal adduction, abduction. The fourth one is internal and external rotation. Bring the arm out and have the elbow resting on the bed with the hand up. Internal rotation will be bringing the hand all the way down to the bed. External rotation will be bringing it back up. Internal rotation, external rotation, really supporting the elbow. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation, internal rotation, external rotation, this one is very hard for many elderly residents to do. So if this one is hard for them, we will do an alternate way by putting the elbow right against the side of the body and do internal rotation, bringing the hand to the abdomen, external rotation, bringing the arm out. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation. And those are the 4 for the shoulder. Now moving down the arm, the next one is the elbow. Palm up. We're going to do flexion, bringing it up to the shoulder. Extension, bringing it all the way down. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. The second one for the elbow is supporting the joint and holding the hand like a handshake. And we are going to do pronation, supination. Pronation, supination. Pronation, supination. Pronation, supination. And pronation, supination. Moving down the arm, the next joint is the wrist. We're going to do flexion, extension, and very carefully a little hyperextension. Flexion, extension, 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 hyperextension. The next one, we're going to move the wrist towards the thumb, and this is radial deviation, and then towards the little finger, ulnar deviation. Radial deviation, ulnar deviation. Radial deviation, ulnar deviation. Radial deviation, ulnar deviation. Radial deviation, ulnar deviation. And the third one, we're moving a joint in a circular motion called circumduction. Very easy with the wrist. There's a lot of little bones in the wrist. 3, circumduction 4, circumduction 5. And we will go backwards with this. Circumduction 1, circumduction 2, circumduction 3, circumduction 4, circumduction 5. The next joint are the fingers. We are going to do flexion, which is bending the 4 fingers down, and straightening them, which is extension. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, and flexion, extension. Then we are going to separate the 4 fingers. These can be done individually or together. Away from is abduction, towards is adduction. Abduction, adduction. Abduction, adduction. Abduction, adduction. Abduction, adduction. And the last one on the upper extremity is the thumb. There are 4 exercises for the thumb. The first one will be flexion, extension. Flexion, extension. Flexion, extension. Flexion, extension. Flexion, extension. Next we have adduction, bringing it towards the hand. Abduction is away. Adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction. Then we will do circumduction, 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 and circumduction. Then we will go the opposite way, circumduction, 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 and circumduction. The last one, we are going to touch the thumb to each finger, and this is called opposition. 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 Opposition, and one more time. Opposition. Now we will cover the resident up so they are warm, and we will move down to the lower extremity and just expose the leg itself. All right, the first one on the lower extremity is the hip. We are going to do flexion and extension, bringing the leg straight up. That's flexion. All the way down is extension. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, and one more, flexion, extension. Now we will do the second exercise. Will be bringing the leg away from the midline of the body, which is abduction, bringing it towards adduction. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, and abduction, adduction. And the last one, and be very careful with this exercise, we will place one hand above the knee and one hand below the knee, and like a rolling pin, very, very gentle. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation. Internal rotation, external rotation, and internal rotation, external rotation. The next joint is the knee. We will support the knee and hold on to the foot, and we will bend the knee, which is flexion. Straightening it is extension. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, and flexion, extension. The next joint is the ankle. We are going to bend the ankle up, which is dorsal flexion, and bend it down, which is plantar flexion. Dorsal flexion, plantar flexion. Dorsal flexion, plantar flexion. Dorsal flexion, plantar flexion, and one more, dorsal flexion, plantar flexion. The inversion, toes in, eversion, toes out. Inversion, eversion. Inversion, eversion. Inversion, eversion, inversion, eversion. The next joint are the toes. Just like the fingers, we will take the toes and bend them down. Flexion, extension. Flexion is to bend, straighten is extension. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. And the last one will be separating the toes either together or one at a time, away from his abduction, bringing them towards his adduction. Abduction, adduction. abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. Now we will do our ending steps. We will make sure the resident is covered with a bath blanket if they would like to stay covered, or it can be removed. That'll be a resident request. We will make sure the bed is put down into low position and the side rails up. Position the call light. Make the resident comfortable and offer them a drink of water. Open the privacy curtain. Go to the sink and wash your hands. Dragging the fingertips up. And get a fresh paper towel and turn the faucet handles off. Now you will exit the room, leaving the door open. Let visitors return and report and record how the resident tolerated the passive range of motion.